Hello and welcome to Conversations with Khofane. I'm Khofane Modise, and today we are going through the leadership series with Botswana Insurance Company. I'm joined today by the CEO, Mr. Newton Jazire. How are you, sir?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
You look fantastic, by the way.
I'm happy to be here with you.
How's your week been?
Hectic, but here to talk to you about leadership and happy to do that.
Of course,
Thank
and
you.
that's what a leader does, right?
Yes.
Sacrifice and all of that.
Yes.
So today we'll be talking about managing crisis, which
Right.
is something that BIC has had to undergo due to COVID and so many other issues. But when we look at managing crisis, how do you define that, and how would you say that crisis, in comparison to a normal or regular challenge, how do you differentiate the two?
Great. So, so usually when a crisis happens, what then happens is that people, it creates fear in the people and uncertainty. And unfortunately for leaders, people always look for solutions to their leadership, and it's not always easy, especially when we reflect on what happened during the COVID period, because people were dying at the same time, and we were expecting them to come to office or to work from home and still service the customers. So it was quite a very delicate situation, but we pulled through that because as a leader, then you have to demonstrate the courage and the bravery you need to pull through this.
I was also informed that you're a coach as well. So I'm wondering if that attribute of being able to coach people and really kind of put them in a mental state of positivity, how does that help, especially in a time of uncertainty?
Yeah, yes, I I try to impart the little that I know as a leader and the experience that they always say that experience is the best teacher. You
Yes.
can't get it in class. So, so I try to impart the little that I know to the people that I work with. And one of my leadership tenets is that as a leader, you need to create that environment that enables people to show their best. So I think that the biggest crisis was that everything seemed to be new at the beginning to everybody, not only for our business. I think globally, not only for Botswana for that matter. So around the COVID issues, everything seemed to be new challenges for everyone. But as a business, what we then decided to do was, of course, limit the movement of our employees, enable them in terms of their work, working from home, capability. We created the connectivity that they required to our core systems here, but they were working from home. We were able to continue to service our customers from home. So it was about now capacitating our employees and making sure that our customers are not, sacrificed as far as service is concerned. In terms of safety of our employees, of course, the few or the skeletal staff that would come to office would make sure that they followed certain hygiene protocols, washing their hands, making sure that they sanitize, making sure that they wore their masks. The challenge we had was that even with masks on, you still find some people were testing positive. So it was becoming a little bit tricky for me and my leadership team, to give the people the confidence they needed to say if we follow this stuff, then they are safe. But otherwise, it created a big crisis. Like you said earlier, the difference then that we saw is a regular crisis is basically, I can say my motor claims have gone up because more people are involved in accidents. That's not a big crisis like we saw. If we are talking about, people dying, people losing their close relatives, their parents, and all of a sudden they are becoming a breadwinner of a big family, that's a much wider crisis than the other one. I'm talking about a regular crisis where we can have some fires around and we have to pay claims. That's, to us, really, it's a crisis, but it's normal business because we are there to pay claims in the first place. So COVID brought a very different dimension to the whole thing, and then post COVID immediately you have the Ukraine Russia wars. Prices are going up, inflation in Botswana for the first time going double digit and upwards. So this became like, serious
It was
significant
a
factors
snowball
for
effect, one thing after the other. Yeah.
exactly. So one began to wonder, where are we ending with this? But fortunately now, as you can see, the inflation environment is getting better. The post-COVID era is becoming more stable. We know that you can get COVID but not necessarily die. I think the immunization or the COVID vaccinations that happened sort of like helped the situation. So yeah, in a crisis, it's always very difficult to to convince people that they are still safe, because safety becomes number one priority in their lives. And not only because of COVID, but the very existence of the business. Because some crises actually can impact the very existence of the business.
True.
So to give people that feeling that there's sustainability in our system and our ecosystem to continue to run as a business, it's not an easy thing to do. But I'm glad that as BIC we managed to do that. We even grew stronger during the COVID period
Is
and
it?
emerged much more bigger than we were before COVID. So sometimes it creates new opportunities for us to explore post-COVID or post a crisis. If you want to look at the positive, you also get some kind of growth like the growth that we witnessed.
What advantages do you think were bred from this crisis? Was it necessarily seeing that some models were not as effective or not as useful as you thought they were, or looking at how you can innovate certain models that you had?
I think the how quick we went into investing in other channels, like bringing technology and how we access our customers and how the customers access us, is also some stuff that sort of like brought an advantage to us over our competition. But also, look, when you already have a crisis, people tend to default towards the trusted brands. You don't want to try new things because now you're already in a crisis. So you don't want to add a crisis on top of another crisis.
It's often said that leadership is about managing crisis, and that's such an important aspect of every leader, I would imagine. So when you assess this country, our country, Botswana, and just Africa in general, what would you say is the characteristic that is essential for every leader when it comes to managing crisis?
So I think for me, it's how much trust you have earned from the people that you're managing. Because in a crisis, it's all about empathy. It's all about culture. It's all about what people believe in. So if you've lost people's trust in terms of the things that you talk about, your integrity, then people won't listen to what you're talking about. They will make their own decisions about the crisis situation. So I think where we fail most of the time is understanding the values that the culture is sort of like puts in the people and how they live. So if we forget the culture, then we tend to communicate in a different way. We tend to communicate in a way that people don't quite embrace, and they tend to be suspicious of whatever you are communicating to them. So I think one of the things that make leaders fail, especially in Africa, is when you go across borders, is that you tend to carry your culture to the next culture. You know, these ethnic groups have got different cultural values, and you need to respect that culture if you are to do well in any different territory from the one you're operating. So if I compare Botswana and the rest of Africa, I've worked in Uganda, it's a different culture. Worked here in Botswana, it's a different culture. But all the time, there are some common values that you find across all Abantu, as in people of Africa. The respect, the trust, the respect for their values and how they live is very, very important. And that's where you start if you want to embed and work properly with the people. So I think as a leader, those are some of the characteristics you need to have. Integrity. People need to trust what you're talking about. If you have lost that, it's going to be very difficult to manage through a crisis.
You've blown my mind again, because I didn't expect that aspect of trust. I thought maybe you had to be a strong leader, you had to have all the solutions and so on, but it really is about the workforce and how they view you. Wow.
Yeah. So maybe I can add to that to say that leadership is all about empathizing with the people. And like I said earlier, creating that environment that allows people to, show their best, give the businesses their best. If they don't trust you that you're gonna give them that environment, you're not gonna get. You'll have people around just for enough work to get their paycheck at the end of the month. But if you allow people to explore, then you get the best out of them. And this to me is really what leadership is about. I've got in my circles colleagues talking about, my number one thing is capital management. My number one thing is customer. My number one thing is this. And I've always argued that all these things will go to the bin if your people are not in the right mindset. Customers will never be happy if your employees are not happy. Because what you transfer to your employees is what gets transferred to your customers.
Wow.
So I think that managing people is at the center of every leadership or good leadership that you can see out there. So this is what has been guiding my leadership over the past plus 15 years.
You've been here for a while.
Yeah.
It's absolutely brilliant. And through it all, when it comes to this concept of managing crisis, what is it that you discovered about yourself as an individual and as a leader?
Yeah, so what I discovered really is that when a crisis hits you for the first time, the tendency is to react like any other human being. Then you ought to understand that you have a bigger audience and a bigger constituents to take care of. And if then the leader of that constituents shows a bit of fear, then it sort of like cascades to everyone in the team. So what I've learned about myself is that I take the blows as if nothing is happening. And then I also want to sort of like communicate the same feelings and the same sort of like courage to my team to understand that this is not the end of life, and we'll pull through this and be better even after the crisis. So that's really what I've learned.
It must be as tough as steel.
It is tough, and like you said, maybe I've been in this for too long, and probably time to give the stick to other people and move on. But I think it's crisis management is not an easy thing. Like you said, there's serious crisis, there's regular crisis, and regular crisis we can always manage that within our usual tools of crisis management. But when it becomes some of these things we've talked about, COVID and stuff, it becomes very difficult for not only for leaders but also even for your followers.
And even for your followers. Yeah. And in closing, what would you want anyone who's listening to this, watching this particular session, to take away from everything you've just said today?
I think it's just to have the courage to take crisis head on. It doesn't change the circumstances to fear and to
that's true.
to show the worst of you in a very fearful sort of like situation. I think what matters is really to say it is what it is. What is the best we can do out of this? And also look for opportunities in that crisis, because there's always an opportunity out of a crisis. And I think that's what I would advise people to do, to look for the opportunities out of every crisis. You look at lack of, when fuel was no longer available at some point for a couple of weeks in Botswana, people were already selling fuel on the sidelines. I'm talking about opportunity of a crisis.
Yeah.
So there are many opportunities that come out of these crisis situations.
Absolutely brilliant. Yeah. It's been an honor to have you on the show. And there you have it. Trust, integrity, and courage is what you need in order for you to manage crisis. Thank you so much, and see you next time.